Hello and welcome to Unleashed. I'm your host, Will Bachman, and I'm happy to be here today with Divya Agarwal. We're going to do Somatics 101. Divya, welcome to the show.
Wonderful. Thank you, Will. Thank you for having me.
So, Divya, talk to me about somatics, introduce the topic, and tell us what we're going to talk about today.
Sounds good. So let's even just start with this word somatics. I imagine some listeners have heard it. So when I use the word somatics, what I mean is essentially techniques one can use with the body. So to build more body awareness as a way or as a tool for getting into presence more effectively and also using body-based practices to be aware of and manage emotion or manage stress response more effectively.
Okay.
And I use the word effectively versus quickly because I know in our culture um, we're eager to do things fast. And there's actually a bit of a mindset shift I want to bring, which is doing things fast or slow isn't what we're solving for. We want to do things that are durable and that will be effective for the long term.
Okay.
And I
So,
want to suggest in our conversation today that body-based techniques can get us there.
all right. I'm jumping in to ask you that there was so many kind of like important phrases and concepts in that definition. Could you say that again, like slower? And
Yes.
I might even ask you to repeat it twice because I really want it because it was such a compact, dense kind of definition of somatic. Just lay that on me again.
Understood. Understood. So let me actually start with the word somatics itself. So the word soma is the Latin root for of the body or body. So the practice of somatics is, in a nutshell, using body based, so being like body techniques, whether it's breathing, generating heat, certain visualization practices that allow each of us to sense ourself better. So sense what is happening within. And that is an avenue or a portal to build, strengthen one's self awareness, builds our ability to sense emotion and train how we're using our attention to then react the way that we're reacting, be responsive or be present, whatever it is that we're looking to do. Body-based practices can help us do that better. That's my suggestion or thesis for today.
Okay, so it's body techniques that allow you to be more self aware, to sense your own emotions, and to be present. Um, and from a practical kind of business perspective, those things might help you get more in touch with your intuition to, in a negotiation or when evaluating a candidate for a job or all sorts of things where you're trying to really perhaps go beyond just your intellectual mind, but using your body as a sensor. And I just added all that extra stuff. It's more of a question to see if those are some of the potential benefits, or maybe I should ask, what are some of the potential applications that a a sort of a consultant or independent professional listening to this might say, okay, what's the business benefit or career
Yeah.
benefit?
Um, can I share a few of what I would call the business benefits?
Yes, please, please do.
So as any human, as any individual, as any professional, whether we're an executive running our own company, we show up in the world, whether it's for a meeting, a difficult conversation, a joyful conversation, we have to show up. Anytime we're showing up, the word presence is thrown around a lot these days. I think we all aspire, I feel comfortable saying all of us, or at least most of us, aspire to be present when we show up. The one way of being present that has been emphasized quite a bit in the mainstream literature and mainstream kind of coaching is mindful present. So using, I'll call it mind-based meditation to get present, just like just knowing that I want to be present, so I'm going to be present. What is starting to emerge as a more durable and effective way is being in the body. So whether it's through breathing, through generating heat by rubbing your hands and putting it on your belly, through just visualization exercises of the body. So what's something often referred to as the body scan, quick techniques like that no matter if you're entering into a meeting, entering a difficult conversation, entering a proposal conversation with a client, quick techniques to get you present so that you're more embodied and more grounded so that that conversation can hopefully go more effectively than not being present.
Okay. So this might be on some listeners' minds, so I want to get it out there and ask about it. Several years ago, there was like this massively successful TED Talk. I think the name was it Amy Scuddy, maybe? About
The power pose.
Power pose, and then it turned out that subsequent research it wasn't really replicated, right? So if I understand this correctly, I'm not an expert on it, but is this kind of is that are we talking about something different than the body pose stuff that has been somewhat discredited, if I understand correctly?
Yeah, we are talking about something different. I'm going to try something here and let's see how it goes.
Okay, good.
The rationale for the posing, I think her thesis or her suggestion was just putting yourself in that stance will help you show up better. If I've my own lived experience of going into a power pose, like it makes me feel strong in that moment, but that lasting strength, it's kind of a superficial embodiment, right? I felt it for the moment. It doesn't mean I've actually shifted, at the nervous system level, if I can go there for a moment. Well, I haven't actually shifted what's happening within me physiologically to show up differently in a conversation. What I'm going to suggest through some of the practices that we'll play with is you're shifting at the nervous system level what's happening within you that allows you to be more present, to be more calm, to be more receptive in whatever it is that you're showing up for. And then what I'm also going to suggest is these practices, when done over time, are actually rewiring or teaching the body, teaching the nervous system to respond differently so that coming into presence and coming into calmness will be easier done over time.
Okay, great.
That's different than kind of this one hit. Let me surgically just go into a power pose and hope that it has an effect for that one moment.
All right, that's cool. And I should probably, as an interviewer here, just let you run and say what you want to say. But it's just on my mind.
No,
so.
I appreciate. I think what Will, you're going to help me do, and this is the reason I wanted to bring this topic into this sort of forum, is you'll help me translate this to be very practical with some physiological teaching. I want to keep very 101. Yeah. But I think that physiological link will be helpful for a lot of our listeners who want some of the science behind this.
That's great. So, and before you get into it, I do have one other question, which is, will this be sort of on a continuum or something kind of different than like just regular old exercise? Like this morning, I don't always get out there, but I'm trying to get out most days. Like this day, I went out for a 3-mile run. It wasn't like super crazy fast, but boy, I come back from that much more engaged and alert the rest of the day. On days when I don't get that, I just feel much more sluggish. So, I mean, just sort of energizes the whole body. And it's not very surprising probably to anybody who exercises. Are we doing something today when we talk somatics, something kind of different in kind, or sort of along a continuum with just?
That's a great question. In the binary world of is it different or on like a linear spectrum, let me suggest that it's different. And I'll say like why it's related to exercise, but it is different because I want to suggest that those of us who don't exercise a lot, this is still accessible to you. It's not any more important or less important than those who do exercise. The link here is that those who exercise, I'm going to make a hypothesis that the more you're in movement, the more you may be in touch with or embodied, like the ability to sense your body may be more developed simply because you move a lot, but it's not necessarily so.
All right, great.
That's why I want to say they're different. That's why I want to say they're different.
With all of that wind up, why don't you now please proceed and tell us a bit about, just keep going now with your explanation.
Yeah, so let me try to do a little bit of what I'll call the teach, and please, Will, do direct me to make this as precise and practical for our listeners, but I'm going to do my best to start.
I got to say, I love that now, and I've never heard it, the teach.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay.
Okay, cool. So the first loaded word I said was somatics. Related to that is the second loaded word I'm going to bring into this conversation, which I'm going to call embodiment or being embodied, embodied, being embodied. That simply is the idea that we're able to feel or be in the body, because building embodiment has a few benefits. So one is that when you're in your body, you can more easily be present, because when our bodies are the things that are actually here. Our minds want, that's what they're designed to do. The body, the physical body, is here. And the lived experience will share. I think I'm happy to say that, or I'm confident in saying that a lot of our listeners, when they're able to feel or be with their breath, be in their body, they can more easily just be where they are, be present. And so the more we can build embodiment as we experience emotions, whether it's anger, joy, anxiety, fear, those are words that have a physiological experience. And so my suggestion is that the more embodied we are, the more we can feel body. I'll keep repeating those words. The more we can actually feel when certain emotions that might be disruptive emotions, like anger, like anxiety, like fear, the more we can feel that they're showing up. And then we can use our body-based techniques like breathing, like visualization, to manage or to bring down those emotions. The science that I'll introduce here, which I know a lot of our listeners will be familiar with because it's kind of part of the basics of neuroscience now. We know that there are three parts of the brain, the amygdala being at the kind of base of our brainstem, the amygdala being our what's called the reptilian brain, the part of our brain responsible for our survival response, right? And knows how to remove or at least respond to perceived threat through a flight or a fight or a freeze response. And those responses have a physiological impact. Our heart starts racing, our palms might get sweaty, we might have the feeling of fleeing, or we might have the feeling of fighting and getting angry and kind of using our words to express anger. My suggestion is the more you get into your body, the more you can feel those sort of emotions and responses coming up, and the more effectively you can manage those responses. So that was one kind of piece of the science, the hijack. The second science or physiological impact I'll bring here is two types of nervous systems that we have. Again, to keep it super simple, we have our sympathetic nervous system response and our parasympathetic nervous system response. Our sympathetic nervous system, related to the amygdala hijack, is the nervous system that shows up when we are in reactive mode, in fight, flight, freeze mode. We're responding very actively to stimuli. The parasympathetic nervous system, commonly referred to as like the rest and digest part of our nervous system, is that part of our nervous system that is present, that allows us to be calm. So when we're in more parasympathetic, we feel more relaxed, we feel calm, we feel receptive. Our ability to listen and be present and be with whatever is happening is greater. And so my goal would be with these body-based techniques, and again, these aren't these one-trick ponies that you do it once and you're set. These body-based techniques or body-based practices, when done with consistency and then really used as tools in any situation you're in, you're actually teaching your body or your nervous system to be more in parasympathetic more effectively or more easily. And when you're in parasympathetic, your capacity, your ability to be calm, to be receptive is heightened. And when your nervous system is calm, I won't go too much into this realm of nervous system co-regulation, but when you are in a calm, it has been shown just through mirroring, right? We talk about mirroring with others. Your nervous system serves as a template for someone else's nervous system. So if you're calm, there's a natural rhythm or synchrony that develops between the two of you, just like if you're in a state of agitation, you and another, there's going to be a synchrony that develops that's more agitated. A big part of my desire with my clients is I want to help you, get into parasympathetic nervous system more often, not only because it benefits you, but it will benefit those around you and the conversations that you're having and the meetings that you're conducting, et cetera, et cetera. You say one last thing, I'm going to pause, Will.
Yeah.
I know that heart rate variability has become a biomarker that's also become a bit more mainstream with these. You see people wearing those rings on their index fingers that are measuring some of their biometrics. Heart rate variability being a big one of them. So what is heart rate variability? Very simply, heart rate variability is saying there's a certain interval between each of the beats of your heart. So it can be, measured in time. Heart rate variability is the difference, if you were to measure kind of time between heartbeat over in a graph, like in different parts of the day, what is the space in between your heartbeats? Higher heart rate variability simply says your heart is able to have different intervals of time often and manage that well. So said really simply, higher heart rate variability is an indicator of someone's capacity to have higher resilience because their heart rate is able to manage or modulate between different durations of beats, and it doesn't get too out of whack. It doesn't get too stressed by that.
Oh, okay.
Low HRV is kind of saying the heart is not able to handle different durations between beats. In the science, it has also now been shown that the more you're in parasympathetic, also the higher your HRV is.
Okay, so I had not paid attention to this science, and so this is new to me, and it's also a little bit counterintuitive. So I would have guessed almost the opposite, that, someone who is super good at being calm and parasympathetic would just be able to, sort of maintain a steadier heart rate, something, throw some, disaster at them, and they just stay calm, and their heart rate stays nice at 60 beats a minute, whatever. But I'm hearing the reverse. So say this again. This is counterintuitive to me. So it's actually shows more resilience if your heart rate, I guess, maybe goes up, but then comes back down.
And it can recover quickly.
Quickly.
It's like in my language, I put it like heart rate agility. So it's the ability for the heart to be at different places and come back to what we'll call the resting heart rate relatively quickly.
Interesting. Okay.
So this is where the athletic connection, if I go there, I grew up as a gymnast, as a dancer, I do quite heavy athletics in my daily life today. And I often think of those people who put themselves in environments where, their heart rate has to go up, has to recover quickly, et cetera. They're building high HRV. They're building a resilience to their environment. Because ultimately, the heart rate, our nervous system, our whole body is connected, right, as a response mechanism to our outside world.
Okay, cool. So that's sort of the science. Let's get into some of the things, some of the exercises that you train people on, if now's the right time to do that.
Yeah, that sounds good. So there are 3 practices that I want to walk Will you through, and hopefully those who are listening may do this in parallel. And let me just do them before I say the why, because what I might ask you, Will, is as you're doing them, I might ask you to reflect on what you notice in your own experience.
All right, that'll be fun.
Okay, great. So to start, I first just want you to rub your hands together. So as if you were going to clap your hands, but instead of clapping, you're running generally some heat.
I'm rubbing. Okay.
Right, as you're ready, place them on your lower belly. So between, I'll call your pelvis and your belly button, like that lower part of your belly.
Ooh,
and just
warm.
Your eyes. And begin to notice your breath. So something we automatically breathing. And simply notice your inhale. And notice your exhale. And notice what you notice with that lower belly coming into your hands. Might you be able to, on your inhale, extend the belly into your hands and just feel that contact? And on your exhale, just feel how the belly retracts a bit. As you're doing this, Will, I'm going to introduce a second practice, what is commonly referred to as box breathing. Another phrase is resonance breathing. So I'd like you to inhale for a count of 4. And exhale for your own count of 4. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. And on this next inhale, at what I'll call the top of the inhale, can you rest in the top of the inhale? So not hold the breath, but hold at the top of the inhale. And as you're ready, you'll begin your exhale. And kind of rest in the bottom of the exhale for up to 4 counts. Come back in, 3, 2, 1, hold. And exhale. 3, 2, 1, hold. Okay, I'll pause here, Will, and invite any reflection.
All right. Well, let's see. It was nice having that nice warm hands on my lower belly. I got to say that there's probably a little bit more belly there than I would like to have. When I was, it certainly made me, I mean, I've done some meditation, now and then. I don't get to it every day, but it is one of my habits that I'm working on. And in this one, I would say with my hands on my belly, I was probably more mindful of like the abdomen belly area, feeling that, than when I do just normal breathing meditation. So it made me more attention, I guess, to the breath going in and out. I did notice a couple times that my shoulders were getting all kind of hunched up, and I had to just think to relax them and not have my hunched up. So those, I guess, were some of my reactions.
Great. Thank you for sharing your reflections. Now I'm going to go into a little bit of the why, and all of our experiences are experience, right? So I also want to suggest that your experience today and your experience 2 weeks from now of doing this might also feel very different. The why for why I rub and then have hands on the belly. First is, without getting a little bit provocative here, Will, I want people to remember that they have a body. Touch is a good way to remember that. To remember like, oh, I am here. I have a physical container that's here around the mind. We're a very Cartesian-oriented society, right? We are in our heads a lot. Coming into our bodies can just remind us like we're here. Okay, so that's one reason. The second is exactly as you noticed, having our hands on our belly brings us more awareness around the breath, and actually brings awareness around having what I'll call a deeper breath. That might be an imprecise way to say like a belly breath or a deeper breath. So often we breathe in the chest area, what we call a shallow breath. So we just inhale and exhale at the chest level. We want to get all of us breathing more deeply. And the reason for that is we know that the longer your inhale, therefore the longer your exhale will be. And it is extending the exhale that starts to bring that parasympathetic nervous system, that parasympathetic benefit online. And so that is the reason for having a bit of touch on the belly involved with what I was calling the box breathing. So 4 in, 4 counts in, hold at the top, and then 4 counts out with the exhale and hold at the bottom.
Okay, that makes sense.
What else do you want to ask, Will, before I go into a second practice, which might be a little bit more unusual for our listeners?
All right, great. Maybe on this one, when would you use this with your clients? So you're
Yeah.
kind of coaching executives and so forth, would you be encouraging someone to do this in their office before a meeting, or just in the morning before they leave for work? Like, how do they integrate this into their schedules?
Yeah. So the tyranny of time and even our mindset around time, which I won't say too much about that right now. So in my dream world, right, this becomes so ubiquitous that people automatically know, just like I have to have an agenda when I go into a meeting, part of my pre-work into going to any meeting is, 3 minutes of box breathing. So it becomes as part of the meeting hygiene as having an agenda is, and putting the calendar invite.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when I'm working with executives, we'll open our sessions always with a practice of box breathing, because it allows for a moment of just landing in the time together, right? They're actually getting back in touch with their breath and their body. I ask them what they notice, and as we progress over time, the noticings become a little bit more nuanced. But just often what I hear is, the more I do this, it is easier for me to find my breath in a meeting when I notice that I'm getting tense.
Okay.
So my hope is that if it becomes part of the hygiene for any meeting or any conversation that might be a little bit difficult, that's my hope, is that you do it before that. That requires already a level of self-knowledge, right? Well, like, I have to have the knowledge that tells me I'm going into a meeting that may get escalatory. So I do it before the meeting, and then I know in the meeting, if I sense myself getting escalated or aggravated, I'm going to actually pause and just take a deeper breath. I'm going to take a 4-count breath.
And tuck your shirt in before the meeting starts.
Yes. And, I have executives that have used this just as as a starting moment for the team as well, right? They'll bring this into their team meeting, and right away, what you're doing is, as a team, you're calming down the nervous system. You're bringing parasympathetic a little bit more online, even as a team, when we're about to have this meeting. There's a state of calm that's a little bit more than what it was before we got in the room.
Okay, great. So let's go on to the next, even more unusual one.
Unfamiliar.
I'm more unfamiliar. I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
visualization. Okay, great. So I'll start, Will, I'm imagining you're sitting down.
I am.
So bring your hands to the tops of your legs. Find your feet on the ground. Just feel the ground under your feet. And just start to place your attention very gently at the feet, and just start to draw your attention up your legs, through your knees, thighs, into the pelvis, to the belly, chest area, up through the neck, throat, behind the ears, around the jaw, around the eyes, and through the crown of your head. Bring your attention to the spine, to the bones of your spine. The spine is an incredibly large, strong, heavier than we might realize, bone structure in the body. I want you to just lay your attention from the top to the bottom of the spine. And bring your attention around the pelvic bowl, so that structure that links the spine into the legs. Bring your attention into the bones of the legs. And cast your attention down the bones of the knees, the bones of the lower legs, and into the bones of the feet. When we bring our attention into the bones of our body are the center of our body. So the bones of the feet are in the center of the feet. The bones of our ankles and of our lower legs are in the center of our ankles and our lower legs. When we can bring the attention to the bones of our body, we become more centered. Our attention is centered in the body. I want you to gently draw the attention now from the bones of the feet back up to the bones of the ankle, bones of the leg, bones of the knees, into the lower leg. Bring your attention around the pelvis, up the spine, and now down the bones of the upper arms into your bones of the lower arms. When we have our attention on the bones of our body, we are centered, because we are centered in the body. And notice what has happened to your breath. Might you be able to bring a longer inhale, so 4 to 6 counts, followed by an exhale, 4 to 6 counts. Okay, let me pause here, Will.
All right. So I guess my first reaction is that when you had me moving my attention up my spine, I was all over that, and up my neck, I was all over that, my skull, over that. I had challenge when you asked me to move my attention up my, feet and leg bones and then down my arms, because I was trying to like divide my attention between my right leg and my left leg, right arm and left, and that I found very challenging. If I had been instructed to say, okay, now have your attention move down your right arm and then back up your right arm and across your shoulders and down your left arm, because I was like trying to like focus on two places at once, and I found that kind of challenging. So that was like one observation. But I feel very centered right now.
That's actually really helpful. That's helpful feedback, Will. Thank you for that. And I'm going to ask if you can speak up just a little bit. I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing.
Oh, yeah.
But if I
I'll
want to make
speak
sure
up.
let me play back what I heard. So the more generalized body scan up the body, it sounds like that resonated or kind of worked for whatever worked meant for you, maybe feeling more centered or grounded in the body. What I'm going to call the bones meditation, it was a little bit more challenging if I just speak about higher legs versus lower legs versus right and left.
Yeah, that's right. It was
that's helpful.
I could deal with when you have just my feet on the ground. I'm like, okay, I'm thinking I can feel my feet on the ground.
Yeah.
But then it was like, okay, now move up your lower legs. My attention was sort of darting back and forth between my right shin and my left shin. I was like, it was almost like if you're pointing with your eyes at one thing. I was trying to sort of have my attention on two things at once, and I found that mentally very challenging.
Yeah.
And it was sort of that felt like advanced placement, super varsity kind of meditation, like try to, keep both legs in my attention space.
In the consciousness.
Whereas if it had been like, okay, slowly go up your right ankle and your right shin and your right knee and your right hip, then I could kind of follow it with my little heat map, mental laser gun. But I found it kind of difficult to focus on two places in my body at the same time.
That's a really helpful level of discernment, Will, that you're giving me, even as a form of instruction with my clients. So thank you. Because I'm not sure, some of my clients might actually have a similar experience and they may not be able to verbalize it in that way. So that's really helpful.
Beyond that, yeah, I feel very centered. Good body scan. Feel very present.
Wonderful to hear. And the reason, the bones meditation, one of my teachers did it with me a few years ago, and that was a new, I'll call it entry point into being embodied. And at least the shared experience verbally from my clients, we don't have the science, I don't have like the RCT right on this bones meditation yet, but I at least have anecdotal feedback, is because the bones are like a hard formal structure. They're not just kind of like the body. There's something very tangible there with the bones. If I can bring attention to my bones, it's a faster way to feel, okay, I'm in my body and I'm ready. Like I'm in my body and I can receive. versus just bringing like mental attention to the body. Like that's a feedback I have, which is it's a more specific anchor point. Let me say it like that.
I think that's right. If you just say, pay attention to your upper leg, then it's a bit scattered or
Yeah.
diffuse. But you could say the top of your leg muscle, or if you say your leg bone, then you're kind of thinking, okay, in the center of my leg, how does it feel? So it feels different, like you're getting very specific.
Yeah. And, margin of error here, our bones are actually in the center of our bodies. Like not perfectly in the center, but they're essentially the thing on which everything else is built around. So it's a very potent way to get into the middle. So those were the two big practices I wanted to offer as a means of getting more in the body over time, and get that parasympathetic nervous system online.
So I imagine that there's, sort of other surrounding types exercises. Talk to us a bit about how you would use this in your practice with clients, and maybe you can take a 10,000-foot view a bit. Now might be a good point to just give us a bit of an overview of your coaching and consulting work, and how does this fit into your practice?
Yeah, great question. So let me start with the 10,000-foot view of, I'll call it my personal mission. I imagine we all have like the mission or endeavor to which we hope to devote our life. The 10,000-foot view of my endeavor is, and this has kind of been with me since I was a kid, I get really intrigued by why humans think, relate, and behave in the way they do. And I think that interest started with my own interest in my own self-understanding of why am I thinking or relating or behaving in the way they do. That endeavor has morphed. It's not different, but it's morphed into something a little bit more specific, which is I think each of us has both the right and the responsibility to be operating from a place of choice, or like knowing why we're doing what we're doing. And I believe that we often haven't been given the skills to do that effectively. And when I say the skills, I mean, like, how do I even know what I'm feeling right now? Well, that requires me feeling something and then putting a name to that something, call it an emotion, and then being able to express that emotion and being able to manage it. Like we often aren't given the skills to do that from a young age. We're starting to introduce those skills, right, in like our professional environments, but we haven't necessarily been given the skills or the permission to do that well. So if that is the endeavor that I'm devoted to right now, one of the interventions of this, one of the intervention is somatics, or what I'm calling body-based practices. Because what I've noticed with clients is if one can build the capacity to slow down, right, through breathing, and just be more present with themselves, that actually is the first step to starting to know or feel or understand, oh, what is it that I'm feeling in this moment? I feel like my heart's my heart's racing. I'm sweating, or I'm feeling like I want to run out of the room. What does that actually mean? And how can I manage that in this moment? And then how can I start to name what's going on for me in a way that then it's more effective for my team? So let me give an example of this. A lot of coaching that I do is preparing individuals for what they'll perceive are challenging conversations, whether it's a feedback conversation with a boss, an interview for a job that they really want and their kind of anxiety is getting in the way, a board presentation where they just have the classic nerves of presenting in front of high stakes individuals. So beyond using this breathing, even just to start our own coaching session, I use the breathing technique to build their ability to notice when they're starting to go off track or fall off center, take a breath, and claim what I call the right to reset. So what I say to my clients is, you always have the right to reset, but that requires you knowing that you're getting off center. It requires you then managing getting off centered, which often is using your breath, coming back to center. And then, and this is kind of the big leap, is naming out loud, hey, you know what? I noticed that I'm going in a direction I don't want to go. Or, hey, I noticed that I'm I'm speaking ahead of myself. Let me pause and reset. That strategy or that move of naming the reset, at least anecdotally from my clients, I've heard is so powerful in, frankly, just, admitting the humility of us all, which is we all make mistakes or we all go down routes we don't want to. And it also role models an ability for others to be able to say, oh, you know what? I can also claim a right to reset, because we all fumble. And it's actually better that the person is so self-aware that they can notice that they're in a fumble. They can pause, reset, and also name that they're doing that. So that's one very acute way that this has shown up in the coaching that I do, but then also the impact it's having for clients in the room.
Interesting. And tell us a little bit about your coaching practice more broadly. So what types of clients you serve, and in what sort of situations do people, get you as their coach?
Come to my work. Yeah. I like to think of coaching in different use cases. The use case of my coaching right now is a big part of my coaching practice is, and also I think the one that gives me the most energy, coaching manager level professionals who have either been given the gift of having a coach for their own development within an organization, but more often are on some version of a professional development plan where they've been given feedback and they want to turn around that feedback over, a 6 to 8 month period. And a big part of my coaching is, I use the phrase at the beginning of our conversation, how you show up. It will determine so much, right? How you're received, how you operate. And so the somatic stuff comes in as a way of helping people. I'll use phrases like show up from a greater sense of calm. And I believe that once you have more calmness, you can be more clear about what are the outcomes you're trying to drive. What sort of leader do you want to be? How are you communicating with your team? You're able to be more receptive to how you're showing up when you're showing up from a place of more calmness. And this is where I think these body-based practices can become a good input into that. That's just one part of the coaching. I'll say a big part of my coaching also is what I call more competency-based coaching. So building the skill of asking good questions, right? Being curious. Those are all what I'll call competence that one can cognitively learn. And this was a lot of work that I know, Will, you and I shared the background of McKinsey. These are a lot of the teachings that we would do at a place like McKinsey, where we can give people framework or language or a template for how to think about difficult conversation. Those are also things I coach on. But my personal stance is, I think coaching is more about building capacities within individuals, which for me is a little bit different than teaching a competency of using certain language to have a certain conversation. I want to build your ability to show up differently. Another domain might call that transformation. But I want to help you kind of build your capacity to start showing up differently, or showing up from a place of choice, which requires a deeper level of self-awareness, self-understanding, etc.
Amazing. Divya, for listeners that would like to follow up and learn more about your practice, where would you point them online?
Oh, come check us out at vivekam.co. Let me spell the name Vivekam. Vivekam is the Sanskrit word for discernment. And Vivekam is spelled VIVEKAM.co.
And we will include that link in the show notes so you can go and click on it down below. Divya, thank you so much for walking me through some of these exercises. I'll incorporate a body scan in my periodic habits. Feel very centered after that. It was great chatting with you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the time and also for being open to what may be more an unconventional topic. I'll be curious to hear the feedback from those who are able to listen.